How does Nick Nurse use Kyle Lowry once he gets into a Sixers uniform, get some practices underneath his belt there for Nick Nurse? He knows Nick Nurse's system. That's not a problem. How will he use him where he's no longer the Toronto Raptors?
Yeah.
Kyle Lowry. He's now a different version of Lowry.
And that's the important distinction, right? We would sit here and say, all of us would probably agree. Kyle Lowry, upgrade on Patrick Beverley. Good basketball player, smart basketball player.
Don't tell Beverly that.
Good shooter. Yeah, we're going to get to Patrick Beverley in a moment. Good guy in a specific role. The question is, and I know like we're coming off of Doc Rivers where everyone thinks that everything Doc did is only a mistake that Doc would make. But coaches prefer veterans. They especially prefer veterans they've had success with and that have a track record. And Kyle Lowry has as good of a track record with Nick Nurse as basically anybody in the NBA. In fact, was like the leader of that entire program, and someone that Nick Nurse said in a recent press conference when he was asked about it, he's the most competitive player I've ever coached. Those suggest, and coaching history suggests, that Lowry is probably not coming here and just playing a 15-minute, you're the backup point guard type of role, right? Like, I think, and this doesn't mean that it's necessarily wrong, but I think that Nick Nurse is going to try to play him as a second ball handler next to Tyrese Maxey. I think they're going to experiment with different lineups. We've already seen it with Campaign, Maxey, and Buddy Hield, right? The three of them playing together.
And Turk.
And Turk. And Turk. So to see the very small lineups they're already playing, and you hear Nick Nurse say Lowry's a competitor, but also Lowry's a super intelligent player. And that tells you, okay, he probably trusts him to play in these multi-guard configurations. And who cares if they're too small? Who cares if they're giving up some things? Kyle Lowry will make it work because, again, to that point I was making about the amount of shooting they have on the team now, they got quite a bit. And Kyle Lowry is contributing to that. He's been a high-volume, ready-to-fire catch-and-shoot player for a lot of his career. So I think he might end up playing him too much. It's too early to say. Maybe he gets rejuvenated coming home. He wants to prove something in this big role he could be afforded. Lowry, right to the moon. I don't know. But my concern would be that Lowry looks like the guy he was in Miami, which is still a decent player, but not someone who should be playing 25 plus minutes a night. And Nurse, I don't want to say refuses to see that, but still continues to roll with his guy because that's his guy.
The one thing about Kyle Lowry that we've seen, and then that I feel like I know, is that guy comes in and he plays the right way. He comes in and he plays any role that the head coach asks of him, and especially when it comes to Nick Nurse. Now, again, that was a different version. That was all-star Kyle Lowry during that time and NBA champion, which he came here for a reason to, again, try to become a second-time NBA champion. He looked at this and felt like this was the best situation for him. Logistically, it worked out coming back home. And, of course, the team that they have, there are going to be two versions of Kyle Lowry playing with the Sixers. Pre-Joel Embiid and then post-Joel Embiid. Right now, we have to worry about the pre-Joel Embiid. And that's probably going to be those 2 and 3 guard lineups that you're talking about, because he has to get creative, Nick Nurse does, with how he wants to do things. And you never know what it's going to call for at the end of the game with what lineups he needs to have out there.
Going to have to ride the hot hand quite a bit.
Defensive focus? Is it hot hand focus? There's so many different ways that could go. I'm very curious to see how that works, because there's going to be a time, Kyle, that you said he's going to trust him. Is he going to lean on him too much? Don't know. We don't know. There are going to be those games where he's hot. There might be that personal game against Patrick Beverley on the floor on Sunday against Milwaukee where that gets fun, right?
The revenge game.
You talking all this stuff over social media? Let's have at it. That kind of thing. But he will play the right way and do everything that he can to win a basketball game. It's one thing about Kyle Lowry that we do know. And I think Kyle, as you said, shoot him to the moon type of performance right out of the gate. I think you're gonna get that burst of I'm home and I can help this team.
We saw it with Marcus Morris, man. He came back and played some whatever his issues are, some inspired basketball.
Yes, he did. And I think there's going to be some inspired basketball by Kyle Lowry once he steps on the floor in that uniform. You know, the first one at home when stepping on the floor, the crowd behind him. He's never done that before. Checked into the game, whether he's starting or coming off the bench, probably coming off the bench. That's going to mean something. And then it's time to play basketball. And he's going to go out there and he's going to want to make sure that he shows up well he's playing in front of his home crowd for the first time, not in a visitor uniform. And I think that's the type of player that you're going to get.
Derek, what do you think about Kyle Lowry? Do you think he can help fix the internet, or is that
he might. He's been he's gonna make a joke.
He went to Villanova.
He did.
He's a smart guy.
Look, he's been around long enough, so like he's seen poor internet service before for sure. No, I think like we've been talking about it. I share Kyle's concern. I was actually somewhat listening there. I share Kyle's concern that Nick's fondness for the past and his being knowing about Kyle's virtues might give him too big of a role than he currently warrants. And we saw with Miami earlier, he's not the guy he was. He's not the guy he was even last year during the playoffs. He's not the guy he was 2 years ago. He's certainly not the guy he was when Nick had him. He's still a guy who can, smart defensively, will give it his all, make an open shot, cut off ball, things of that sort, make decent decisions, but you're just not going to give him the ball and ask him to create out of pick and rolls. That's not what his skill set is anymore. I think he will be a good option. I think he will give you valuable minutes. I think he will fit next to Embiid. He'll probably look a little more natural of a fit when he's finally playing next to Embiid. He'll be fine. I do share a lot of the concerns that Nick might overuse him.
Going to take some charges, man. Who
Yeah.
takes charges on this team? Nobody.
For that?
A 6 foot tall Ersan Ilyasova.
Yes. Yes, he is.
With a lot more of the ability to dribble. So listen, Kyle Lowry's still a good player.
Yes, he is.
I would agree with the people who think that he's washed, but that's more a commentary on how far he has fallen. Like at his peak, he was a very, very good player.
Yes.
Now he's a decent player. He's just not somebody that I think should be playing a high volume.
No, if he plays more than 20 minutes, I would be really concerned.
Yeah. The point is that Lowry, we all believe, can be a helpful contributor in a specific role.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Will Nick Nurse leave him in that specific role? I would say probably not, but how big does it get? Remains to be seen.
We all silly like the mayor.